explore that like pre and post in that fade to black way.
I used to write fade to black sex scenes, but then when my mother passed away, I'm like, oh! I'm gonna open up that bedroom door now. It's true, it's so weird, but I guess I just was too embarrassed to have my mother read them. And anyway, one benefit to such a terrible thing. But my husband, I won't point it out to him when he eventually gets to reading my book, which he acts like he's gonna read from like the first minute I finish it. You know, he prints it out and he carries it around. And I'm like, how far have you got? Page 10, you know? And I'm like, I got it for 10 months. But anyway, I'm like, I already wrote another one. So, but anyway, when he gets to the sex scene, he's like, oh, you got a little sexy in there. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, a little uncomfortable, because clearly we've been together since we're 25, so, you know, I don't have to spell it out. But anyway, yeah, I don't think he's so cool with it, and I don't really care, and that's just
George's books are so hot compared to mine. Mine are like so chaste. I'm like, you know, he cups her chin. In scene. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Oh God. So I'm still learning how to write a sex scene. I will say that my husband's fine with whatever, but my dad listened to the audio of Super Bloom and had to be like, la 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 la, like during like very chaste moments. So I just don't think I'm ready to go any further.
my kids freak.
Oh my God.
Freak, and they're 30, 27, and 25. They're like, oh my God.
I have the same issue with my daughters in their 20s, and it's just, you know, again, a lot of fade to black in my books as well. But one of the things that I really loved about my husband was he was a very serious military historian, and he once read on a plane, in plain sight of everybody on the plane, my teenage novel Unrequited, which was about a boy band and a girl, and that for me was really one of the most beautiful things that he ever did for me.
Is there something that is there a trope that hasn't been done, or something that you wish or long for? You feel like we've covered everything in the rom-com genre, or I mean, like George is bringing forward the queer Christmas rom-com. What's left? Where is this genre going, or is it the comfort of the formula that makes people so drawn to it?
The world is really hard right now, and a rom-com is like one of the only escapes that you could really have. I mean, do you really feel like watching people getting blown to bits, or any of the action films? So I think that's where it's always needed. It may not be fresh, but it's always needed. No, I don't think there are any other tropes. If you find one, don't tell me, because I'll take it.
I think Catherine Sinter wrote a really great piece in one of her books. Was it Hello Stranger, maybe? And it was sort of in defense of the romance novel and the rom-com, and why we sort of gravitate toward the comfort of these books that we know are going to sort of turn out right. And it's a beautiful piece, so you should all read it and track it down if you haven't read it. So I think there is a comfort that we sort of gravitate toward, and that won't go away anytime soon. I think the way that we sort of revolutionize things is bringing fresh eyes to it, you know, thinking about the moment that we're in, and always, you know, changing up the comedy. And that's where I think it gets fresh, like doing a new way to lose your bags at the airport. You know, how can you change it and make it different?
I've been watching a lot of Korean rom-coms on Netflix. If you haven't got into this, I highly recommend it. But I'll find sometimes that I'll sort of drift off, and I'll be checking my phone or something, and I'll realise I've lost the thread of the story because I haven't read the subtitles. But the show can still give me goosebumps just watching what's happening and not even having to understand the dialogue. And I think that's the universal language of love that we relate to all across the world. And I think it's just a beautiful thing that, but certainly we were talking before about feminist writing and queer writing, and there's just so many exciting new directions that this can go. but at the end of the day, it's still a love story that brings us back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what we're seeing is like, whose love stories are we telling? Like the rom-coms of the 90s were all, you know, really very straight, thin, white women who like worked in PR in Manhattan, right? It was in that film. And now we're just seeing stories where, you know, I mean, a friend of mine is writing a poly rom-com between 3 people. There's, you know, we're seeing just different, whose love stories being told. We're seeing so many different of-color characters, of-color writers, whether it's age, like, you know, characters who are kind of more in their like 40s, 50s, 60s, as opposed to like the 25-year-old, because everyone deserves to see their love story on the page or on screen. And as readers, as a reader, I'm interested in not just seeing a carbon copy of myself in a story, so that's really exciting. And I think also just the genre itself is just elevating. It's continuing to elevate. Like Emily Henry, who is the most successful romance writer of the moment, her books on the page are genuinely so funny, so clever. Like on a line level, they're great, as well as telling a great story. You know, this is not the Fabio bodice ripper of the you know, of the last decade. We're in a completely new world when it comes to romance. As far as tropes go, and you know, if you're not sure what a trope is, it's like there's only one bed. Uh-oh, what are we gonna do here? There's tropes like forced proximity is a trope, fake dating is a trope, like we have to pretend to date because I need a promotion or whatever, and you need to tell your family that you have a partner. And so those sort of things, I think, where writers are also finding like fresh ways to approach these tropes because people really like them. And every time I see any kind of poll online, you know, it's like readers are still like loving the tropes. You know, there's we're not sort of sick of them yet, which is great news for all of us.
Thank goodness.
And I also just think no one's ever going to get tired of reading about love. You know, when you talk to your friends and family and they say they have a new partner, you want to know, oh, how did you meet? Someone gets engaged. Oh, you know, how did he or she ask? You know, you don't get tired of hearing those stories. It's a very universal human experience. So I don't think that any of us are going to be out of a job. People are going to want to read about love.
Well, it's actually, there's a resurgence because for a long time I wrote rom-coms for movies. Now that like kind of died, right? And it's back. I think it's back because of Netflix and, you know, that they're having all these rom-coms on television. And I think that feeds the amazing books that are rom-coms. They feed off the Netflix movies, and it's just become, aside from the state of the world, it's become popular again. And I think it's fantastic. And I'm happy to be writing them again.
Does it matter if you can tell where it's going? Like, how do you balance predictability and page turningness? That's not a word. Right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, okay, so she's gonna end up with this guy. Like, let me just get to the part where you know, is that hard?
It's very tough.
Yeah, it's, you know, you know that it's going to be a happily ever after. These characters are going to get together. And I think there's ways that you want to keep the reader entertained and sort of surprised throughout by